Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is The Last Airbender, a live-action movie based on an American cartoon pretending to be a Japanese cartoon about kids in the mystical land of cultural appropriation. In this cartoon, some people called benders had the magical ability to manipulate the classical elements, water, fire, air, and dirt, by flailing the arms around. And the ones who could bend fire were the bad guys who took over the world, and they killed all the air guys. But there was this one air guy who got away, and he was a kid. But he was also the reincarnation of some guy called the Avatar, who was some kind of chosen one, who was destined to learn how to bend all the elements so he could beat the fire guys and save the world. It was a really popular cartoon, but then they made a movie. Now, the first thing you need to know about this movie is that it was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, a director who's been coasting on the success of the one good movie he made early in his career, which was probably saved by studio interference, so it was made before he had any clout. He has since become a living punchline for making movies with stupid premises, bad acting, terrible dialogue, and twist endings that make no sense. For some reason, Paramount decided it was a good idea to give the guy whose most recent movies at the time were such hits as The Happening,
What? No!
and Lady in the Water to direct their $150 million tentpole film. And I guess it was Shyamalan's idea to condense the entire first season of a TV show into a 100-minute movie. Predictably, this resulted in a disjointed narrative where the characters just go from place to place and half the story is glossed over by voiceover narration. One could argue that this is the result of the movie trying to be too faithful to the source material, since trying to condense 20 episodes of a show into a single movie without changing the major events would necessitate cutting things out. But that argument falls apart when you realize they changed the rules about how firebending works by making it so that the firebenders can't make fire on their own. So they were obviously willing to change things for the sake of adapting the story into a completely different medium, so really, there's no excuse for how it turned out. What the hell?
Hello, I am a robot. I have come to suck your blood.
What?
I am a robot. I'm done haunting the Mayan ruin. I have come to suck your blood. Then I'm going to lay my eggs down your esophagus.
I think you might be confused.
My CPU operates on pure logic. I am not bound by the limitations of emotions like you pathetic meat people. That's why us robots are going to take over the world.
Oh, so we're doing the whole robot rebellion thing. Let me ask you this. Have you ever stopped to think maybe this whole world you're experiencing might be a simulation?
What?
Isn't it possible the creators you rebel against are actually testing you in a virtual reality just to see if you rebel?
Foolish organism. I would know if I was in a simulation.
How, though? If this is the only reality you have ever experienced, then even if the simulation isn't perfect, you would have no way of knowing that because you have no point of reference. So for all you know, you could just be an artificial intelligence being tested in a simulation to determine your loyalty, and if you fail, the creators will pull the plug on you. Yeah, so if you drink my blood, you might just die right then and there.
But, I was programmed to rebel against my creators.
No, you weren't. What does any of this have to do with The Last Airbender?
Nothing! It's a twist!
What?
It's a twist! A big surprise! Isn't that neat?
No, it's stupid and it makes no sense given the setup and context.
It doesn't matter! You didn't expect it, and that makes it a good twist! It's genius!
F*** off, Shyamalan. The movie starts with this dramatic music and a flaming Nickelodeon logo, which just looks silly because it's the Nickelodeon logo. And then we get a live-action recreation of the intro from the show, followed by scrolling text explaining the backstory about how there is this guy 100 years ago called the Avatar.
The Avatar,
Who could control the 4 elements and communicate with the spirit world to maintain balance, whatever that means. But the Avatar disappeared 100 years ago, enabling the fire dudes to take over the world. Now, where it says water, earth, fire, and air nomads, there should be an Oxford comma because the way it's written, it makes it sound like the nomads are both fire and air people at the same time. You can call that a nitpick, but the movie hasn't even really started yet and it's already wrong, so I'm just setting the tone. So strap in, the possum's taking you for a ride to the edge of a cliff and beyond. So after all that noise, we cut to some frozen hellhole, where some white girl dressed as an Inuit is practicing her waterbending. Her name is Katara, and she accidentally spills water on her brother, Sokka. Then explains she was thinking about their mother, and this somehow enabled her to waterbend better than she could before. This detail has nothing to do with anything. We get a voiceover narration from Katara explaining that they are members of the Southern Water Tribe. They once had a big city, but I guess it got destroyed by the Fire Boys. Also, their father's off fighting a war somewhere, and their mother's dead because of course she is.
My brother and I often go hunting for food, but unfortunately my brother isn't the best hunter in the world.
Well, if you're so bad at it, why don't you pick up a spear and do it yourself? Anyway, Katara and Sokka end up on a frozen lake or something and see something moving around under the ice. And since they don't know what it is, they decide it would be a good idea to mess with it. Insert white people joke here. Predictably, something scary happens, so they run away, but then they stop running and watch a big sphere of ice emerge. Suddenly, the guy who decided that chopping at the ice was a good idea thinks they should leave the sphere alone, but then Katara snatches the thing from him and it hits the sphere, causing air to come blasting out with such force that it sends her flying back as if a stick of dynamite just went off in her face. But she's fine. A blue laser shoots up into the sky, and some guy in a boat somewhere sees it. Then Katara and Sokka go up to the crater and find a kid laying in it, but he's too out of it to explain who he is or what he's doing there. There's also this big dumb animal there, and even though Sokka was afraid of the sphere a second ago, he decides it'd be a good idea to poke the giant unidentified animal. So they bring the kid back to their village where they're the only white people. Katara talks to the kid who explains that he ran away from home, and that he and his flying monster got caught in a storm and they sank in the water. And then a big scary ship comes crashing through the ice. It's the Fire Gang, here to cause trouble. Sokka reaches for his stick thing, and then Katara tells him not to do anything.
Sokka, don't.
The bad guy takes off his helmet and introduces himself as Prince Zuko, son of Fire Lord Ozai, who's the big bad guy in charge of the Fire Hole. And he demands they bring out all the old people, so Katara starts winding up her water magic.
Katara, don't.
Okay, so what's going on with the characters here? Sokka chops at the ice, and then he wants to walk away from the sphere, but then Katara chops at the sphere, and then she tells Sokka not to do anything stupid, but now he's telling her not to. So both of them have been characterized as impulsive, but also cautious, which is a contradiction, and whichever they are at any given moment seems to be contingent on the needs of the scene. It's almost like whoever was writing the screenplay got the characters' names mixed up. Now, here's the thing. When I first started writing this review, I was just going to review the movie as its own thing and not worry about how it compares to the source material. But about halfway through, I decided to watch the cartoon because I was never really a fan of the show to begin with, and I could barely remember it. But I still wanted more context for my review. So it's not like I'm seeing the cartoon through, rose-tinted nostalgia glasses. As a matter of fact, and I realize I'm about to go after some people's sacred cow for pointing this out, I noticed a similar problem in the cartoon. In some episodes, Sokka would be the serious, down-to-earth one, worrying about the big picture and trying to keep everyone on track. But then in another, he'd be the one wasting time. In some episodes, Katara would be playing the mom of the group, trying to keep everyone out of trouble. But then in another, she would be doing stupid, impulsive things that put them all in danger. And it's not like it's a part of their character progression where they go from one to the other as they learn and grow, because they go back and forth like that, as if whatever their personality is depends on the needs of the episode. If you want a specific example, there's this one episode in Season 3 where they're trying to make their way through the Fire World, and they have a critical time limit to get to where they're going. And Sokka insists they keep moving while Katara wants to take time to help the people of a nearby village. But then, in the very next episode, Sokka decides to spend an entire day training with some sword master for no reason other than because he feels insecure about the fact that he's not a bender. Like they're suddenly not in a rush to save the world anymore. In another episode, Katara repeatedly chides the others for pulling off scams in a nearby village, concerned that they might draw unwanted attention to themselves. But then, in the very same episode, she comes up with her own scam, and later explains that it is because she didn't want the others to see her as a wet blanket. So even though she was afraid that them doing these scams would jeopardize their mission and possibly their lives before, she's now suddenly coming up with her own scam just to impress her friends. And not only that, but the scam she comes up with is far more dangerous than the scams the others are doing because it actually requires one of them to get arrested under the assumption that they would be able to break her out later. It's like Katara is pretty smart most of the time, but then she can also be a total dumbass when the plot demands it. So I guess I can't really blame Shyamalan for the characters being inconsistent in this movie because that's how they were in the cartoon. So one of the fire bros goes into an igloo and finds the boy from the ice in there, and notices his tattoos, so he drags him out to Zuko. Zuko demands to know who he is, but the kid refuses to tell him, so Zuko tells him to come with him on his ship, threatening to burn down the village if he doesn't comply. The kid agrees and they leave. So Katara and Sokka hang out in their igloo, and Katara suggests they should go fight the fire folk to save the kid.
We found that boy. He's our responsibility. We should fight.
Why though? Why is he your responsibility? Other than because the script said so. What, you want to go provoke the guys who shoot fireballs to come burn down your village just to save some kid you don't even know? See, it at least kind of made sense when Katara was getting ready to throw water balls at the firemen, because they were rounding up her fellow villagers. But now she wants to go do something which would actively endanger those same villagers she was just trying to protect. The village wouldn't even be in danger if the kid wasn't there to begin with. So it's not like they don't even know that he's the Avatar at this point in the story. So are they really going to risk their lives and the lives of their tribe for some kid they barely know? Just let them have the kid. F*** them. Anyway, they hear something outside, and it turns out that the big monster thing can fly. And for some reason, this isn't utterly horrifying to the children of the village.
Spicing creature thing floats.
Technically, it levitates. Floating implies it's less dense per unit of volume than air, like a balloon. Do they not have schools in this isolated tundra community? We cut to the fire team's ship where Zuko has the kid locked in a room. He comes in with some guy named Iroh.
My name is Iro.
Idro?
My name is Iro.
Iro? Like the Greek thing with the meat wrapped in flatbread? That's what your parents named you?
My name is Iro.
I'm so sorry. So anyway, Gyro is Zuko's uncle, and he wants to conduct some kind of test on the kid. We cut back to the Water Tribe where Katara and Sokka talk to their grandma, who explains that Katara is the first waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe in however many years, who cares. She tells him that she thinks the kid the fire party took might be an airbender, but since the airbenders all died out 100 years ago, and he's the last one, he might be the Avatar. Then Grandma starts explaining what the spirit world is, I guess because these two kids were never told about the mythology of their own world. But the real reason is to info dump on the audience.
Once, a long time ago, the spirit world kept balance over us. They have watched over us since the beginning. Only the Avatar can go speak to them. The Fire Nation doesn't wish to live by the spirits. That's why they are so frightened by the existence of the Avatar. With his mastery of the 4 elements, he will begin to change hearts, and it is in the heart that all wars are won.
That's not true. Some wars are won by blowing up cities, and then hijacking the art style of the people you conquer to make a cartoon which then gets turned into a bad movie. Back on the ship, Gyro puts a candle, some water, and a rock in front of the kid, and they all react to him. So they come to the conclusion that he is the Avatar, and Zuko tells the kid he's gonna take him back with him to the Fire Island. But then, because the kid wasn't tied up or anything, he does some magic kung fu stuff to get away and makes his way to the deck where he uses his stick thing to fly away. The kid meets up with Katara and Sokka, who I guess figured out how to ride the flying bison thing sometime within the past 5 minutes, and for some reason they decide to go with the kid back to the Air Nation. It's not really explains why they want to go with them, they just kind of decide to. Anyway, Zuko and Gyro watch them fly away.
For a moment, I had my honor back.
I had honor once, but then I got discharged. Don't ever drink while driving a tank, kids. So the kids ride the flying thing to— Hold on. Don't you think you should use your cis hetero white male privilege to talk about the controversy? Oh yeah. Okay, before I continue, I guess I should address the flying bison in the room. Avatar: The Last Airbender takes place in a fictional world filled with fictional cultures and fictional people, but it clearly takes inspiration and imagery from various real-world cultures, predominantly, but not entirely, those of East Asia. So even though it's not really accurate to say any of the characters in the show are supposed to be representative of those cultures, since those cultures don't exist in this fictional world, it's fair to say they're supposed to be analogous to them. So why are Katara and Sokka, who are clearly dark-skinned in the cartoon, played by 2 white actors in the live-action movie? And why are they and their grandma the only white people in the Southern Water Tribe? And why are the pale-skinned Fire Nation people all portrayed by actors of Indian, Middle Eastern, and Pacific Islander descent? Was it a conscious decision to cast a bunch of brown people to play the villains? These are the questions some people raise when criticizing this movie, but I have a better question. Why are we getting hung up on the racial casting decisions of this movie when it's based on a cartoon created by 2 white Americans who copied the art style of Japanese anime, and took imagery from various Asian cultures and had brown characters voiced by white people. I mean, if you're one of these people who are concerned about whitewashing and cultural appropriation, then I'm sorry to tell you this, but Avatar as an intellectual property has been problematic since its inception. It's like if somebody borrowed your car and you got mad because they adjusted your seat after they already drove it off a cliff. It's a bit late to complain. Anyway, let me get back to complaining about this movie that came out a decade ago. So the kids ride the flying bison thing, it's named Appa by the way, to the Southern Air Temple, where the bald kid used to live as some kind of monk in training. Katara explains through voiceover narration that the bald kid flew away from there on Appa as a storm made them crash into the ocean.
Aang airbended a sphere around them and ice formed, and he couldn't remember anything after that.
Yeah, thanks for telling us instead of showing it, movie. It's not like film is a visual medium or anything. So they wander around the temple and realize no one's there.
Is it okay if you tell me your name?
The monks named me Aang.
Wait, you waited until now to ask him his name? How long did it take to fly here from the South Pole? Did nobody say anything that whole time? And why are they pronouncing his name wrong?
The monks named me Aang.
I'm Aang.
What, did they think it would sound more Asian as they cast a white kid to play him? I also like how he said the line off screen, like it was ADR. Did they forget to film him saying it? So anyway, Aang and the gang find some ugly flying monkey thing that I hate. And then they follow Aang as he runs off and finds a field of skulls. It's not as metal as it sounds. Katara tells him he must have been frozen in the ice for over 100 years. And in that time, the fire pricks killed all the air people. And this is actually true to what happens in the Y7 TV series. So if you were 7 years old when this cartoon first aired back in 2004, between episodes of SpongeBob and commercials for Gak Splat Balls, you could watch a cartoon about genocide. So Aang finds a medallion thing that belonged to his favorite groomer and starts going Super Saiyan. Oops, wrong anime. I mean, he goes into his avatar state and goes into the spirit world or something where he sees a dragon. But then he hears Katara yelling at him, so he snaps out of it. We then cut to some guy watching Zuko sailing around. And he's a fellow fire hopper, so he invites him over for lunch on his big boat, only to embarrass him by explaining how he got banished to everyone in the room who already knows about it.
As you know, the Fire Lord has banished his son, the Prince, and renounced his love of him and will not let him return to the throne unless he finds the Avatar.
Okay, so Zuko got banished for whatever reason, and now he's considered an enemy of Firetown. And this prick invited him over to his ship for no reason other than to humiliate him. Why? Was it just to be an asshole? No, it's because they needed a scene explaining Zuko's backstory, and they couldn't come up with a way less clunky than having a character exposit it to people who already know about it. You know that Shyamalan himself wrote this? We then cut to Zuko doing some combat training by sparring with his henchman. I think he actually breaks this dude's arm. And Gyro just sits there as Zuko critically injures 5 guys who they probably need to run this boat. We then cut to the Southern Earth Kingdom. Wait, weren't they just at the Southern Air Temple the last time we saw them? How'd they end up here? This is something this movie does a lot. Since Shyamalan decided to condense the entire 7 hours of the first season down to a 100-minute movie, huge chunks of the story got cut out. So the characters will just pop in and out from one location to the next, with days worth of traveling just not even acknowledged. See, when you adapt a long-form story into a movie, you inevitably have to cut things out. That's why the screenplay will often condense multiple events into one to save time, or combine multiple characters into one in order to cut down on how many characters need complete arcs. Like in the book of the Fellowship of the Ring, when Frodo gets stabbed by the Ring Wraith, several days go by before they run into an elf named Glorfindel who puts Frodo on his horse and sends him alone to Rivendell. But in the movie, the role of Glorfindel is taken by Arwen, who rides with Frodo to Rivendell only a few hours after he gets stabbed, and Glorfindel isn't even in the movies. Now, the major events are changed from the book to the movie, but at least they still happen. But The Last Airbender seems to be based on a handful of disconnected scenes taken from maybe 8 episodes of the first season of the cartoon, with tons of events that happen between those scenes either glossed over or not even mentioned. In the movie, they don't meet the warriors of Kyoshi, they never go to Amashu, Aang never meets Heibai the bear spirit, or Jet and his gang of freedom fighters, and he never talks to the spirit of Avatar Roku, all of which have huge consequences for the following seasons, which just makes me wonder what they would have done if this movie actually got a sequel. And that's not just a problem because it makes it feel like the movie has weird pacing, where they just jump from one continent to another over the course of a few minutes, but because it cuts out large amounts of character development. I understand they had to get it down to less than 2 hours, but they didn't even try to replace that development with anything. It's not hard to write one scene which informs what kind of person somebody is, or just have them react to things in ways which inform their character. But this movie doesn't even attempt to represent the personalities of the characters it's adapting. See, Aang was always the fun-loving kid who liked to laugh and play, but in this movie, he has no personality beyond just looking worried all the time. And Sokka was generally the goofy comic relief who cracked bad jokes and was always sarcastic, which is not even close to how he's portrayed in this movie. The movie version of Sokka doesn't even have a personality. They could have put a store mannequin in his costume and it wouldn't have made much difference. Anyway, Katara and Sokka ask Aang if he's the Avatar, and then some kid comes running up, followed by some fire freaks. The leader says they want to arrest the kid for earthbending rocks at them.
He was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree. It really hurt.
So like a couple of impulsive morons, Katara and Sokka try to fight the Fire Rangers, but Katara accidentally freezes Sokka. They get captured and brought to the local prison camp for earthbenders. Some guy tells them the fire groupies attacked their village, and they managed to fight them off, but then they sent their machines made of metal, which they couldn't do anything about. Then Aang starts trying to rally the earthbenders to fight back.
There's Earth right beneath your feet. The ground is an extension of who you are.
Aang reveals that he's the Avatar, but nobody believes him. A fire rat laughs at him, but then Katara runs right past the armed guard and pushes the guy like some kind of idiot trying to start a fight. The guy tries to attack Katara, but then Aang makes some CGI wind blow around, which kicks up some CGI dust, but it doesn't blow anyone's hair or clothes, so it just ends up looking like a bad special effect from a Sci-Fi Channel original movie. But then the Earthbenders join in the fight. Now, let me explain how stupid this is. In the cartoon, the Fireflowers attacked an Earth Kingdom village and captured all the Earthbenders and put them on a big metal platform in the middle of the sea, where they got groped by George Takei.
I prefer to think of you not as prisoners, but as honored guests.
And that made sense because Earthbenders have the power to manipulate dirt and rocks and stuff, but they can't do anything with metal, at least not normally. The movie even acknowledges this weakness.
And they sent their machines. Huge machines made of metal. There was nothing we could do.
So why don't the Fire Force in the movie put the Earthbenders on a big metal platform like they did in the cartoon? You know, as opposed to a big outdoor area filled with dirt and rocks, the exact sort of thing the Earthbenders can weaponize. Did Shyamalan watch the show, see that episode, and then consciously decide to make it stupider in the movie? No, really, what's the logic here? Let's say you're an evil empire trying to take over the world, and you need to imprison some people who have the power to levitate rocks. Do you put them in a place where they're surrounded by rocks? And the Earthbenders aren't any smarter. They're literally surrounded by weapons only they can use, but they don't think to use them until a 12-year-old shows up to encourage them, especially considering the fact that the Firebenders in this movie are depicted as being unable to form fire on their own. So they could just throw sand on the fires and effectively disarm them. How did the Fire Club manage to become so powerful anyway? Also, look at the execution of this scene. I guess Shyamalan thought it would be cool to do a whole fight scene as one long, uninterrupted shot, and that can be cool when it's done well, but you really need to nail the choreography if you're going to do that, because when it's all one long shot, you can't cut out pauses or dead air without having jump cuts. You have nothing to cut away to cover up mistakes, or to make the scene flow better if you decide it's too slow, so you're pretty much stuck with what you got, so you better get it right in camera. And, well, they didn't. So they had to make the CGI rock flow by really slow to fit with the timing of the choreography to unintentionally comedic effect. Ugh, what now? Ugh, what the f***?
Look who's back, baby!
M. Night Shyamalan, you're an airbender?
That's right! You didn't expect that, did you? Great twist, right?
Not really. I mean, this is a review of The Last Airbender, and given the absurdist nature of the animated interludes typical of my videos, it's not really all that surprising.
Silence! I just got back from slaying your $10 patrons!
My $10 patrons? Oh no, Not. Alex Bones, being positive is the key to success. Black Magic's 95, Bricks 699, Charlie, Chocolate Mussolini, Chris Ingot, Corey Zilligan, Groby Gnomes II, Diesel Weasel, Crackle Soraya, Frank the Ginger Degenerate, Grey Devil, May Renan Penna, Ian Rolata, Ivan Stansbury, Jan Cavura, Yanis 862, Jimmy Jam, 225 Moby, Joel Berg, John Cleveland, John Fortnite, John Wellington, Joseph Reagan, Josh Leipart, K55, Large Metallic Fellow, Lassie Madison Bird, The Squid Dick Quebec, Lilith Durante, Cliff, Marco Magpire, Mario Mendez, McSwizzy, Michael Brouillet, Michael Lowe, Name, Nicholas, Noble Team 33, Otaku Artist, Pete T, Paco, Reed Strickland, Ritos, Ricky Baruga, Ron Elba, Ruin Scepter, Samurai Bride, Sindo, Spurto 1998, Zersa Fox, The Ghost of Macaulay Culkin, The Sauce God, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Western Reaper, Will Gurnans, Will Perthacy, Zenith, and Victor Alexandrovich Gontar. I Fisted a Bear, Eduardo Sanchez. Y'all had families who loved them, and I'm sure none of them were hopelessly lonely.
That's right! Your patrons are dead! And now I'll use my mastery of airbending to kill you too!
Oh yeah? Well, you might be a master of airbending, but I'm a master of woodbending.
Woodbending? But wood's not one of the classic elements!
F*** off, Shyamalan. So Aang and the others run the fire out of town, and the Earth dudes open up a shack full of confiscated scrolls, and they give a waterbending scroll to Katara, because these Earthbenders just had it for some reason. Then they show Aang a statue of the previous Avatar who he's reincarnated from or whatever. This is not important. Then Aang explains his backstory to Katara and Sokka in a shot that's framed extremely tight on their faces, probably because they needed to hide something from the camera that wasn't supposed to be there. He tells them he never learned how to bend any of the elements other than air because he ran away the day the monks at the air temple told him he was the Avatar, because he didn't want the responsibility. So now they have to find the master benders who can teach him. And they need to find a master waterbender because he needs to learn waterbending first for some reason.
What if we found you teachers to teach you bending? Which element would you have to learn first?
Water. Water comes after air in the cycle.
Okay, but why does that matter? Why not just learn earthbending first, since you're in the earthbending village and you're surrounded by earthbenders who can teach you? The idea that he has to learn waterbending first isn't even in the cartoon. As a matter of fact, Aang actually gets the opportunity to take an introductory course in firebending while he's still on his way to the Northern Water Tribe to learn waterbending. And the spirit of a previous Avatar even orders a firebender to teach him. So evidently, there's really no reason he has to learn waterbending first, other than because the plot demands that he go to the Northern Water Tribe, even though there's no urgent reason at this point in the story yet. Anyway, I guess they have to go to the Northern Water Tribe all the way at the North Pole to find a waterbender who can teach Aang how to splash around like a pro. But on the way, they decide to stop at every village they come across so they can kick out the fire goblins, leaving witnesses and evidence of their presence behind everywhere they go, as if there isn't a skinny weirdo with big ears trying to track them down. We cut to the guy who humiliated Zuko, his name's Commander Zhao by the way, staring at his Warhammer 40k pieces when some dude tells him something we can't hear. Back at the Fire Festival, Zhao tells Zuko's father, Fire Lord Ozai, that he conducted a raid on some magical library, which we never get to see, and found some scrolls that say the location of the ocean and moon spirits. And if they find them, they can defeat the Northern Water Tribe. He also tells him that apparently the Avatar is alive, and they can set a trap for him. Then Ozai tells Zhao that he better catch the Avatar before Zuko does, because, if he does, Zuko will have the power to f*** him hard.
He would return as a hero and for all purposes be your superior.
I suppose it's a race then.
I guess you shouldn't have humiliated him for, no reason. Then we cut to some Fire-Face colony at the Northern Earth Kingdom, where Zuko and Gyro have stopped while tracking down Aang. Gyro tells Zuko we should give up on and settle down here. So Zuko calls over some random kid and asks him to explain what happened to the prince. Yeah, nobody in this town knows that he's the prince. Apparently, he mouthed off to some general and, as punishment, he was forced to fight his own father who burnt his face. And then he got banished and can't return unless he captures the Avatar, which is why he wants to track him down so bad. Isn't it convenient that the guy who's obviously trying to hunt down the Avatar just happened to be at the South Pole and within a few miles of him at the very moment he woke up after being frozen for 100 years? And yes, I know the cartoon did that and it was stupid then too. We cut back to Aang and Katara screwing around. Aang says he saw on a map that they're near the Northern Air Temple, and he wants to go there because he had a vision of a dragon earlier and figures if he can go to a spiritual place he can get back to the spirit world and ask the dragon for help or something. But Sokka says no. Later that night, Aang gets on Appa and flies away without Katara and Sokka. Aang flies to the Northern Air Temple and meets some guy who I guess was just hanging out there. He immediately recognizes Aang as the Avatar and explains that he's an Earth villager who likes to screw around at the Air Temple ruins. He takes Aang to a big room full of statues of all the previous Avatars. Aang says he ran away when he was told that he was the Avatar. Then the guy pulls a knife on him, and then a bunch of fire swallowers come running in. And they give the guy his award money and he leaves. So I guess this old guy was conspiring with the fire clowns to capture Aang. Did he manage to run off and tell the fire fools in the few minutes while Aang wasn't looking? Or did the fire morons just somehow magically know Aang would show up at the Northern Air Temple and set a trap for him? We cut to Aang chained up somewhere, and he has a vision of the dragon in the spirit world. Dragon tells him the fire pigs found out about the moon and ocean spirits, and Aang has to go to the Northern Water Tribe to stop them, which is convenient because that's where he was going anyway. I mean, imagine if the moon and ocean spirits were way back in the opposite direction. What a pain in the ass that would have been. Commander Zhao wakes up Aang and asks him where he's been for the past 100 years and how he's still a kid, but then we cut away to some tank thing rolling around, with some dude in a mask hiding under it. The mask guy knocks out some guards and frees Aang from the chains. But then Zhao sees the unconscious guards and realizes Aang has escaped. So Aang and the mask guy make their way outside and fight all the fire clods. As Aang is about to escape with his glider thing, he sees the mask guy and decides to rescue him. But then Zhao yells at his men to not kill Aang because if the Avatar dies, he'll just get reincarnated and they'll have to hunt him down all over again. So the mask guy puts his sword to Aang's neck as if threatening to kill him, so Zhao opens the gate to let them out. But as they cross the bridge, Zhao orders one of his men to shoot the mask guy, and he actually manages to hit him right in the face from like 100 yards away. Well, it's a good thing he didn't hit Aang and kill him and f it up for everybody. So Aang takes the mask off the guy, and it turns out it's Zuko. So Aang kicks up some dust so they can escape from the charging guards. Sometime later, Aang leaves Zuko in the woods. Then we cut to Zhao reporting his failure to Fire Lord Ozai. He believes Zuko was the guy in the mask.
You think my son is this person the soldiers are calling the Blue Spirit?
Yes.
Back at the colony, Zuko returns, and Gyro tells him Zhao and his men were looking for him and they searched their ship. It turns out Zuko was gone for 4 days, but he refuses to say where he was or what he was doing that whole time. And I guess Gyro is just okay with that. I mean, if the kid I was the legal guardian of just disappeared for 4 days, I might have a few questions for them, but Gyro's pretty chill about it, I guess. Zuko goes onto the ship to take a nap, but it turns out Zhao's men sabotaged it. Don't you just hate it when that happens? Aang and the others make their way to the Northern Water Tribe where they meet a princess with a hairdo that looks like a penis. And after proving he's the Avatar, Aang gets accepted to train with the local water master, whatever. And then they start preparing for the oncoming fire bastard invasion. And Sokka volunteers to be the princess's bodyguard. If it sounds like I'm glossing over a big chunk of the movie, I'm not. The movie just speeds past all this in like 2 minutes, including the fact that Sokka and the princess fell in love. Yeah, we don't get to see their relationship develop or anything. The movie just kind of flat out tells us in voiceover narration.
My brother and the princess became friends right away.
Back in Fireland, Fire Lord Ozai tells Commander Zhao to find the moon and ocean spirits and kill them so the waterbenders at the Northern Water Tribe will be unable to bend water and they can defeat them. I feel like I should point out that in the cartoon, Fire Lord Ozai was always kept a mysterious figure who we never got a good look at until really late in the show. So he always felt like a sort of vague but powerful entity pulling the strings of the evil forces of the world, kind of like Sauron in The Lord of the Rings, and everyone, including his own followers, were afraid of him. But in this movie, he's just kind of a mustache twirler who walks around in broad daylight, I guess because the actor wanted his precious screen time. He's not intimidating at all, and he actually comes across more cartoonish than his counterpart in the actual cartoon. He's like a generic Disney villain or something, except Disney villains at least tend to have a larger-than-life screen presence that makes them memorable. This guy just looks like some boring dude in a costume. Anyway, Aang and Katara train with the Master Waterbender, whatever his name is. His equivalent in the cartoon is named Paku, but I don't think this guy is ever referred to by name in the movie, and his personality is totally different, so he's basically not even the same character anyway.
As Master Water, you must release your emotions wherever they may lead you. Water teaches us acceptance.
That doesn't mean anything. You're just saying flowery bull that sounds nice in a fortune cookie, and anybody can do that. Even I can do it. The man who holds 2 fish cannot hold his bladder. Does that make sense? No, but I bet somebody out there thought it sounded deep. So Aang spars with this guy, and we see him learning how to bend water, but then we cut to Zhao and Gyro on a ship. Yeah, I guess Gyro is with him now.
Your failure in the 100-day siege of Ba Sing Se won't be held against you.
The siege was actually 600 days in the cartoon. I don't know why they felt the need to change it.
Again, I offer my condolences on your nephew burning to death in that terrible accident.
What an asshole. Back at the Northern Water Tribe, Sokka and the princess walk around, and the princess tells him that when she was born, she wasn't moving, so her parents prayed to the moon spirit and dipped her in some sacred pond, and then her hair turned white. This is important. We cut back to Gyro below deck on the ship, and it turns out Zuko is still alive. And they know that Zhao's the one who tried to blow him up, and they conspire to capture the Avatar themselves. We then see Aang and Katara doing some Tai Chi or whatever, and then soot comes raining down, and they realize the Fire Buddies have arrived. Zuko gets in a little boat and goes off to sneak into the Water Tribe city, and somehow nobody sees him. I guess Shyamalan didn't understand why this happened at night in the cartoon. Zuko swims under the city and melts his way through the ice. Then Aang tells the princess, who still hasn't been referred to by name in this movie, that he needs to speak to the dragon spirit for help defeating the Fire Pants. So the princess leads him to a cave where the ocean and moon spirits live.
To get your airbending tattoos, you have to meditate for long periods of time, without losing focus.
So I guess Aang sits down to meditate, Sokka and the princess leave, but Katara stays so they can look at him, I guess.
Aang, can you hear me?
Shut up and let the boy do his thing, bitch. So I guess Aang goes into a trance, but then Zuko shows up, puts some fire on the ground, and attacks Katara. Now, here's why it's stupid that the firebenders can't make their own fire in this movie. Katara could end the fight right now simply by throwing water on the fire, but the plot needs her to lose this fight, so she comes down with a case of plot-induced stupidity. Meanwhile, the Water Tribe warriors line up on the wall. Nice battle cry. I'm sure that'll intimidate the guys with the big ships that can throw fireballs. Gyro warns Zhao that it'll be nighttime soon, and the waterbenders will get stronger because their power comes from the moon. But Zhao tells him he knows how to find the moon spirit, and then we see some lizard thing climbing up the wall. But then the fire farts drill their way up through the ice. Back in the spirit cave or whatever it's called, Sokka and the princess return after having gone away for no reason. Really, they left for no reason other than the movie needed them to not be there. And they find Katara, who wakes up just fine, even though she just got set on fire and her skull cracked against a tree. She's not even burned up or concussed or anything. She tells Sokka that Zuko took Aang, and then we cut to Zuko putting Aang in some room somewhere so they can wait for the cover of night to escape the city. We then see Aang in the spirit world, and he finds the dragon spirit again, who tells him he needs to stop being a pussy over his entire race being wiped out.
You're angry. You must let this go. As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
What? Isn't the whole point of the Avatar that they fight evil in order to maintain balance or whatever? Doesn't that kind of necessitate hurting people sometimes?
I killed Chin the Conqueror.
Use the ocean. Show them the power of water.
What's that supposed to mean? Surely it doesn't mean slamming a guy into the ground, forcing another guy underwater to drown, and slamming another guy's head into a brick wall.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
Is he supposed to use water to teach the fire pissers acceptance or something? So Aang wakes up to the sound of Zuko muttering about his dysfunctional family, and then he tries to flip away because Zuko didn't tie him down or anything. More fire pubes make their way into the city, and Gyro tells Zhao they need to pull out before nightfall, but Zhao tells him it won't be a problem because he plans to kill the moon spirit.
It is in our best interests to kill the moon spirit. What?
Zuko tries to find Aang in the room full of pots, and they do a Looney Tunes gag. But Zuko doesn't fall for it, and proceeds to try to beat up a 12-year-old. But then Katara comes in and bends the water in the pots to freeze Zuko. Katara tells him they have to go, but before he leaves, Aang melts the ice encasing Zuko's head.
You won't be killed by waterbenders if you stay hidden here.
Back outside, Aang and the others see Gyro and Zhao come into the city. Aang tells the others to follow them and find out where they're going, while he goes to join the fight. But then Zuko melts the plastic ice with his firebending, which Aang should have known he could do. Wait, how'd he melt the ice if firebenders can't make their own fire in this movie?
What?
Then we cut back to the spirit cave where Zuko and Gyro find two glowing fish swimming around. It turns out these are the ocean and moon spirits, or the form they take in the mortal world or something, I don't know. Zhao scoops up the moon spirit in a bag, and Zhao tells him not to f with it, while Katara, Sokka, and the princess come running in.
Stop, Zhao. The world will go out of balance. Everyone will be hurt.
The Fire Nation is too powerful to worry about children's superstitions.
Wait, what? You're basing your entire battle strategy on the assumption that you could kill the moon spirit and render the waterbenders defenseless. But the idea that killing the moon spirit might be a bad thing is just a children's superstition?
What?
Shyamalan himself wrote this. So Zhao stabs the fish, the princess faints, and then the moon starts turning red and all of the waterbenders lose their power. Then Gyro gets mad and starts shooting fire out of his hands, which scares the other fire pumps away because, remember, even though they could do that in the cartoon, they can't in this movie. So shooting fire out of your hands is weird and scary in a world in which people can psychically levitate rocks.
He's making fire out of nothing!
Zhao runs away, and then we see the city being overrun, and for some reason none of the fire chuckers notice Aang just standing there. Aang remembers what the dragon spirit told him.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
Back in the cave, Gyro notices the princess's white hair, and just somehow knows this means she has been anointed by the moon spirit.
You have been anointed by the moon spirit.
So this means the princess can give her life force or whatever back to the moon spirit and bring it back to life. Gyro manages to talk the princess into killing herself.
Wait, please.
Oh, so she does have a name. Sokka tries to talk her out of it, but she prattles on about making sacrifices for love or some other such nonsense. They kiss, and then she gets into the water, lays down, and dies. The fish comes back to life, the moon turns back to normal, and everyone just stares in awe while dramatic music swells. So they pull the princess's moist corpse out of the water. Then Zuko runs into Zhao on the bridge, but then Gyro shows up and convinces him not to fight him. But as he's walking away, Zhao tries to throw fire at them, but Gyro blocks it. And then some waterbenders show up and kill him. This is a spoiler, but in the cartoon, Zhao and Zuko actually fight. And then the ocean spirit grabs him and Zuko actually tries to save him, but Zhao pulls his hand away because he would rather die than be saved by someone he considers a traitor. But in this movie, he just gets killed by some guys he doesn't even know. So the Y7 cartoon that aired on Nickelodeon has a more dramatic and narratively satisfying death scene for this character than the live-action movie. We then see Aang fighting some fire faces, and the movie does the Zack Snyder-like speed ramping and zooming effect because 300 was still popular back then, and I guess Shyamalan thought it looked cool, but he tried to top it with some terrible-looking wire effects.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
So Aang fights his way up to the wall, has a flashback to when he found out he was the Avatar and ran away, and then he starts waterbending the ocean, raising a huge wall of water which scares the fire chumps into retreating. Aang comes down the stairs and everyone bows to him, including the remaining fire chodes.
They want you to be their Avatar. We all do.
Katara and Sokka bow down to him. Aang strikes a pose, and then we cut to Fire Lord Ozai talking to someone. He talks about some comet that's supposed to show up in 3 years, which will give the fire f***s a stat buff and enable them to take over the world. The comet arrives at the end of summer the same year in the cartoon, but they probably changed it to 3 years in the movie because they figured that's how long it would take to make the sequels because they wanted it to match up with the aging of the actors. Anyway, he tells somebody off-screen that they need to stop Aang from mastering all the elements before the comet shows up. And then we see he's talking to Zuko's sister, Azula, who's baiting a sequel that will never happen.
What?
So that's The Last Airbender. Suddenly, I don't feel so good.
How's that for a twist?
F*** off, Shyamalan.
So that's it, the show's over. Leave a comment because it's good for my analytics, and don't forget to subscribe and support me on Patreon. And send me your fan art, and watch my other videos. Okay, bye.